This is the meeting brief for April 12th, the meeting at 6 p.m. That was moved in a previous meeting from the normal Monday on the 11th because 3 trustees had scheduling conflicts, so the board ended up moving that. Opening, we have all of our normal stuff. We have the new treasurer in office, and when we have a treasurer's report in here, all of the individual items are correct, and the total amounts at the end are correct. The general total amounts in between that are off. They didn't add up correctly, as she said. So minor thing, especially such a quick turnaround right away. We got the paying bills, fire department report, planning commission report, and that type of stuff. And those are included in here, and then the people will speak on those at the time as well. On our decision items, the first one we have is for the Mattel board position. I put out on the website and sent to the Dalton Library and the Montague Library my notice about the position being open because the previous supervisor resigned. I'm fine with having the position, but if someone else was interested, I was open to them applying. And we received 1 letter on that, and that's included in the packet, so the board will vote on who's going to the Mattel board on that. Since we only have the 1 letter at this point, I assume that's the way it'll go, but we shall see. Next, we have Resolution 2022-11 for Michelin Road, Resolution number 4. This was postponed. I think everyone that wants to know everything knows it by this point. We've been dealing with it about a year. It's been 10 months since the board voted on and accepted the initial petition, and obviously the petition had started before that. So it's been about a year. A lot of information out on it. And these 2 Michelin resolutions I included in the reference packet. I had to update the dates on them. And that's also, and then Resolution 2022-12 for the Michelin bond. And obviously these should go together. It'd be odd to vote one through and not the other, but they are separate resolutions. And I think everyone knows the debate on Michelin. And basically we had 1 objection in the previous packet, and then few days before the previous meeting, we ended up with 5 more written objections to it. But the hearing was held and concluded. I think that kind of surprise for the board in those last couple of days of the objections is why we ended up with this final postponement. Not ideal to postpone decisions like this because it throws stuff off and you have to adjust things and mistakes can be made and notices are out and all of those types of things. But nevertheless, here we are on this. And the road commission, after that meeting happened, finally gave me a number on what it would take to take care of the rest of Michelinda. And I believe the lawyer estimates were over $5,000 somewhere in the process from them. The millions were about $25,000 in. To complete the project into a gravel upgrade out there would be $60,000. So about $90,000, maybe $100,000 out there to kind of finish up what's been being done if we didn't do the paving. But if it goes through, then you could have the people that have objected before the people that objected in writing before the hearing, they could take it to the tax tribunal, which there's 6 of those. And so if they ended up winning there, which they could win a partial or a full, then that has to come out of the township general fund. Technically, we could go through the same process again and redistribute that cost to the other people in the assessment district, but then you would have to go through this entire process again to do that, and those people could object, and I think it would be reasonable for those people to object at that time. So not necessarily a good option. So I'll be dealing with that, assuming people go to the tax tribunal. Even if this goes through and the project gets done this summer, which hopefully it hasn't been delayed enough that it doesn't get done this summer. But if it goes through and it gets done this summer, I'll still be dealing with the paperwork and legal side of it for a year probably, something like that. So interesting stuff. The next one is Resolution 2022-14 for Thunderbird Raceway, and there were 2 things on this. One was that they wanted to start doing concessions in their concession stand again, which had previously been used for selling a few other things, souvenirs or something like that, or snacks. And then they wanted a time extension. And what had happened here is in their use permit, as of now, they're allowed to go to 11 p.m. The sound ordinance for a business in a residential district in the general ordinances is 10 p.m., but their use already says that they can go to 11 p.m. Last year, they were so busy that the previous owner, Sprague, had come in and he made an application to midnight, and then he ended up splitting it essentially in the planning commission and then with board approval for 11:30. Now the new owner had applied for midnight as well, and the planning commission did a split vote on it, 4-2, and I know it's even a little more controversial than that number summarizes, and said no for at 11. And the basic arguments on the side of the Raceway are that it'd be good for their business so that they don't have to cut any races short and this type of stuff to get the time extension, and that going to 11:30 last year there were no official complaints into the township. The case against that is that there's this inconsistency in the ordinances if some businesses are being allowed to go later and later when the ordinance says that it should be lower and that the noise is a nuisance. So that's the basic argument there. I'm guessing we'll hear things on both sides of that in the public comment. So that's another thing to note, is none of these things, even though we have a number of controversial things in this meeting, none of them are public hearings. And so the people that want to speak on these issues, and I'll have to make sure I mention this at the meeting, want to do the first public comment to make their case for whichever side of whichever issue it may be. Next, we have Ordinance 2022-03, and this is a rezoning for a property on M120 near Twin Lake, and it's a rezoning from residential to commercial. There were a couple of objections in the Planning Commission, and they ended up voting unanimously for it to go through. The objections were basically that it would disturb some wildlife and that it would cause more traffic. But as it's zoned now residential, someone could develop technically up to 15 houses in there for a subdivision, because you could divide it up, which would cause a ton of traffic and disturb the wildlife as well. So rezoning it doesn't actually change that circumstance, and maybe makes it a little better than it would be if it stayed completely residential. And overall, the master plan has that area developing into a commercial section as well for future land use. The senior millage money allocation is next, and we spent about $10,000 this last winter on snow plowing. This is the first year we were trying that. Mostly good feedback. I'd called all the people that had done that program and got feedback from most of them. A few of them didn't get back to me. And overall, pretty good feedback. Some didn't think the quality was great, and so there were a few quality control issues, and I think you're probably always going to get that. So we ended up with over $17,000 left, and we discussed it before, the board had discussed it before, of putting it toward the Safe Seniors program for the various scams that are run against seniors and preventing but also pursuing those as criminal activities. And the county now has 2 officers inside of the county. I think they're from local municipalities that are assigned to that duty, and I believe they're making progress on that. We essentially have to make scams overall less of a good business to go into to try to curb that, and so that's the idea of that. Next, we have the Lakewood Road Traffic Control Order, and this, I've been getting calls on this. I mean, I get calls on road stuff all the time, right? Message the road commission basically every day about something, which if you multiply that throughout the county is an immense amount, right, which is very interesting. But this one is Lakewood Road coming off of Staple. And it goes down and it turns into a subdivision field. There is a 2-track that goes back into the woods over there that is known as a party get crazy spot, which is not ideal. But people fly up and down that road, so I've gotten a number of complaints on people going too fast. The part up near Staple Road is set at 45 miles per hour. And I inquired into this, and speed studies overall are generally not a great idea. And I've included some literature in the reference packet on speed studies. Normally what happens, people are complaining about other people driving too fast, and so they want the speed limit reduced. And so if you trigger a speed study, the state police and the road commission essentially measure what people are actually driving and set it at the 85th percentile. And if people are already driving too fast, what it gets set at is usually higher than what it already is. And so the people that want the speed lowered end up triggering a speed study that ends up raising the speed. That's how this normally works. So it's not a good system, not ideal. And if you get enough density of houses, because you have small enough lots that are put in, then a calculation can be done where the speed just ends up getting lowered. Or if you have a bunch of fatal accidents and stuff like this that'll trigger them actually lowering it. But otherwise, very difficult to actually get one lowered. And so in this case, it's been inquired into a few times, and one of the guys that was calling me inquiring into it, there was a law that was going to expire that ended up getting extended through the state, and he made a few other cases to that point. Ended up reaching out to the Michigan State Police again, who I talked to about it before. They ended up ignoring me this time. But the Road Commission looked into it again as well, and they found a traffic control order that was passed in 2007 to set that speed limit at 45. Now, I assume that was to reduce it from the 55 that it was initially at. Now more houses have gone in, there's more people living back in there, and so it's a little more developed. The Road Commission is open to the possibility of rescinding that traffic control order. So the Township Board has to rescind it, the Road Board has to rescind it, and then that will trigger having a speed study done, which obviously we're in dangerous territory if you want the speed reduced. The Road Commission estimates that the speed will probably be reduced to 35 in the area from people driving and then setting at the 85th percentile, but there is no guarantee. In this case, hopefully it comes out in that direction. I think it would be an improvement. Next, we have adding the treasurer to the bank accounts, which of course only makes sense. And finally, we have the land bid opening for the 5.6 acres on Russell Road. This was put up as a minimum of $28,000. The person that had requested it has included a letter to the Township Board, which I included in the packet, making the case that it should go up for less. And so the Township Board obviously can't violate our own minimum that we set in this meeting. The board could vote to put it up again with a lower minimum. I don't think that's a great precedent to set. The board has that power, but then it seems odd of getting the realtor appraisals and such. So, which is quite a process that we're going through on people being able to request and sell off land, and it seems to be going decently well. So, and then we're up to the final public and board comments at that point. I didn't include any discussion items in here. We'll have a bunch more at the next meeting, of course, but there's, I think at least Michelin, Thunderbird, in the rezoning, and maybe the traffic control order, and maybe Russell Road will be controversial issues that people will speak on, maybe on either side. And so, and there's usually one other thing that I don't anticipate that ends up becoming a big deal in a meeting as well. So there's a decent amount in this meeting to keep us busy, that's for sure. If anyone has any questions, thoughts, ideas, comments, concerns, feel free to reach out. My direct line at the office is area code 231-332-6700, or you can email supervisor@daltontownship.org. Thanks. Bye.